heard this story about a couple of missionaries. They were partners. They would go around different places and establish churches. They were really good at it. They had a lot of success, these two guys. Became famous as missionaries. And then one time, there was a falling out, and one of the missionaries, what the deal was, he wanted to bring in this other guy, this third partner. And the first missionary, he didn't like that idea very much. And so they ended up splitting up. You've heard of these guys. One of them's name was Barnabas, and one of them was named Paul, and the third man was not very lying. It was John Mark. This is Acts 15. And the sad part about it is that after they split up, they never apparently got back together again as far as being partners in mission work, and their ministries just sort of fizzled after that, and they never had any more success in mission work. Well, you know that's not actually true. Paul, at least, we don't know a whole lot about Barnabas, I don't think, but Paul at least had still a great deal of success in mission work. And I guess the point of what I'm trying to illustrate here by telling this story that's well known, and we've thought about these two guys quite a bit, is God used them in whatever situation they happened to be. When they were partners, God used them to do amazing things in this world, in their ministry. And then they broke up, and they went their separate ways. And that was a shame. But God used them separately to do amazing things and to accomplish His work in this world. You will enter into situations in ministry where you will immediately form a partnership with someone else, maybe a youth minister on staff, maybe the preacher on staff, maybe an elder, maybe a member of the congregation. You will form partnerships, and it will be wonderful, and you will work so well together. Your talents will fuse so well, and you'll complement one another. And things will be great. And you will enter into situations where immediately upon entering a church, there will be tension with someone. Maybe with the youth minister, maybe the preacher, maybe an elder, maybe someone else on staff. There will immediately be tension. Or maybe that tension will develop over the next year or two. And you will have to figure out what you're going to do with that tension. Well, Paul and Barnabas, there was tension that developed in Acts chapter 15. And Luke tells this story in a pretty dry way in terms that he doesn't really take sides. I can't tell anyway, that Luke is taking sides. Well, Paul was right, Barnabas should have given in. Or Barnabas was right, Paul should have been in his will. I don't see that Luke really takes sides in this. He just sort of tells it straight. This is what happened. They split up after that. They went their separate ways. It wasn't long after that if you trust the we passages, that's actually Luke joining up with Paul in Acts. The first we passage, at any rate, comes in Acts chapter 16. This breakup of Paul and Barnabas was chapter 15, and the first we passage, I think, is Acts 16, verse 10. And so it wasn't long after that Luke joins up with Paul, but he doesn't say, Paul was right, Barnabas should have. He just said that's what happened. They decided they would be better off not working together anymore. They went their separate ways. There's biblical precedent for saying there is too much tension in this relationship. God will be able to use me in a better way, I think, if I go somewhere else. Certainly, the main themes of Scripture would lead us to the conclusion that it is almost always better to try to work through that tension. I mean, Paul is constantly telling his churches, you guys are in tension with each other, you need to get over it. Find a way to, first of all, stop taking each other to court. That would be a good way. Stop sleeping with somebody else's spouse. That would be a good way to work through the tension. You need to get over the tension that you have and learn to be the people of God. Start working together. So the dominant themes of Scripture would lead us to the idea that it's almost always better to try to work through the tension, and yet we have Paul and Barnabas as an example that sometimes the tension is so great that it ends up being perhaps better. Who knows what would have happened if Paul and Barnabas had stayed together? I can guarantee you God could have used their partnership for decades to come. That's not what ended up happening. I'm not a full-time minister. I've never been a full-time minister. I have never really desired to be a full-time minister. And so my perspective on building ministry relationships is probably going to be different from what you are experiencing right now and what you will come to experience as your life goes on. But I am involved in ministry in various capacities. And so I'll give you some of my experiences. One ministry I'm involved in is mission work in a couple of places in the world. And one missionary that I'm involved with, partnered with, is Dimar Elam. Dimar lives in Athens. And with him I go to the Philippines. And he's got this school over there. And I'll go there and teach in the school in the Philippines. I guess I've been involved with Dimar about a decade now, a little bit less. A lot of this is going to be determined by personality, as far as how you relate to people, obviously, I suppose. My personality is such that I don't like to be the dominant person in the relationship as far as ministry goes. I like to be the kind of guy that people point and say, go do this, and I'll go do it. I don't want to be the guy with the big vision about how things are going to go and making all the plans. That's not who I am. I feel like I have a very particular set of skills that make me, all right, thank you, that make me valuable in a particular way. Yeah, just the fact that you got that makes me laugh. All right. And I like people to point at locations and say, you go teach there, and I'll go teach, but I don't want to be the guy making up the big plans. That's my personality. Well, Dimar points at a place and says, go teach there, and I'll say, what do you want me to teach? And that's how our relationship goes. One of the things that Dimar says that has really stuck with me, I like this two-word phrase, or I guess it's three, flexibility and adaptability. He says that a lot. When he's giving mission talks, he says flexibility and adaptability. That's what you need. Now, he's talking about mission work. When you're in mission work, you need flexibility and adaptability. Now, that's certainly true. Obviously, any sort of ministry, you need flexibility and adaptability. And I would go further and say, in any aspect of your life, you need flexibility and adaptability. So this is sort of a whole life kind of view, but in mission work, it's maybe an extreme example of when you need flexibility and adaptability because you're entering cultures that are not your own oftentimes, and you've got to, just go, what do they say, roll with the punches or go with the flow. I have certainly been in situations, I'm thinking of the Philippines right now, Haiti I go to frequently as well, in both locations where, I have a general idea of what's about to happen. A general idea, like I'm going to go and teach people. Now, who exactly I'm going to teach, that's oftentimes, we'll see when we get there, where exactly I'm going to do this, how long it's going to last, is it going to be 30 minutes, is it going to be, 5 hours, we'll see. These kinds of things are often up in the air. I have certainly been in a situation, I'm thinking of one situation in the Philippines where I was asked to go preach somewhere. It was a Sunday morning, and so Jerry, my driver, he picked me up. He was one of the students at the school. Jerry and I drove together 30 minutes or so to this congregation, and there's 20 or 30 people gathered under an awning, and it's a breezeway of some guy's house. And everybody's gathered together, and I'm sitting sort of on the front, thinking, okay, we have gathered for a worship service at which I'm going to preach. That's what's going to happen. So Jerry gets up and he leads a couple of songs, and then somebody else leads a prayer, and then Jerry gets up and says, and after this song, we'll have our Bible lesson from our visitor, Ed Gallagher. And then he leads the song, and I'm thinking, Bible lesson? Now, does that mean the sermon? Or are we in a Bible class right now? And so Jerry gets done leading that song, and I pull him aside as he's stepping down and say, is this Bible class? He says, yes. And I'm teaching? Yes. And then the sermon is later? Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, got it. At least I know where I am now. And so I get up there and I've got, 10 seconds to figure out what is about to happen. What am I going to say? What's Bible class? So, flexibility and adaptability. You have those situations where you just got to roll with the punches. You got to do what you got to do. And, there's what use is it to get mad at Jerry? Why didn't you tell me there was a Bible class? You just said it was a sermon. That would be silly and ridiculous on my part. I wish he would have told me, but hey, roll with the punches. So you're going to be in situations where you need flexibility and adaptability. I'd say again, your entire life, you need flexibility and adaptability. Know who you are and what you bring to the table, but be flexible about that. And recognize that other people might do things that you do, and they might do it better, and seek their input. I don't think it's any secret to say the biggest issue I have seen in churches or mission work or anything along those lines is lack of communication, or let's say poor communication. Leaders not listening to what other people would like to say to them. Maybe being in the presence of somebody saying it and not really hearing it, and not really trying to understand what their desires and needs are. I've been in churches here in the United States where that has been a very big problem from, let's say, the elders' standpoint or the preacher's standpoint, not listening. I've been in mission situations where that has been a very big problem. I mean, this is pretty common, especially for us Americans who like to, we know how things ought to go, and we'll go over to a place and here's how you do church, and we sort of dominate the relationship with the people in whose country we are. We don't listen oftentimes. Listening. Flexibility and adaptability is a lot easier if you'll just listen to the people that you're working with. You're going to have tension in relationships, whether, again, it's fellow staff members or congregants or your elders, unless you really struggle to listen and hear what people are saying. And so I think about this passage that was not read for us earlier, Luke chapter 10. While they were traveling, he entered a village. This is at the end of the chapter. And a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary, who also sat at the Lord's feet and was listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks, and she came up and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to serve alone? So tell her to give me a hand. The Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but one thing is necessary, and Mary has made the right choice, and it will not be taken away from her. That's an interesting passage, isn't it? I think about that passage in terms of hospitality because that's what's happening in that moment. that maybe one of the lessons is that hospitality is not about presentation, but hospitality is about people. And Martha, in that moment, is concerned about the presentation, and she has legitimate concerns about that. But in that moment, Jesus says, Mary has chosen the good part here. Communication, she's chosen to listen. She's not so worried about the presentation. But in relationships, in ministry relationships, I think we can say that as well. Ministry is about people, and it's not about presentation. And there are some classes here where you learn about the presentation, and there are some classes here where you learn about people and how to interact. But at the heart of it, both are important. But at the heart of it is people. At the heart of it is listening. At the heart of it is relationship with people. You're going to need to form partnerships in ministry if you want to be successful at all. You're going to need to form partnerships with people on staff, and you're not going to need to form partnerships with your bosses, which are, you can think of that either as the elders or the congregation as a whole. You're going to need to form partnerships with other ministers at other congregations. And almost always, when tension forms in those relationships, as it surely will, the gospel encourages us to work through those tensions, to preserve those partnerships. Not always, but almost always. Preserve those partnerships through flexibility, adaptability, communication, listening,